I'm up here in the remote southern mountains of Malawi, and you can see these beautiful rivers that are feeding a powerhouse. 1,600 families are connected to the power that comes from this powerhouse and two others. This one has 50 kilowatts of excess energy, so we've come in to work with the power producer to make use of that energy for Bitcoin mining, which makes them more self-sustaining, and it can also just increase the livelihoods or decrease the cost of power for those who are connected.
After decades of war and bad spending decisions by the government, Lebanon's economy is in ruin. I'm speaking to people who've had their life savings wiped out. There are fuel shortages and power cuts, a local currency that's lost 95% of its value, and crucially, money trapped in the bank. People are literally robbing banks at gunpoint to demand access to their own cash. And because of this, a sort of shadow crypto economy has emerged. So we're talking about locals mining for Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and Litecoin to earn money because they can't find work. Others are getting paid in Bitcoin by finding freelance gigs on Reddit and then treating Bitcoin like their bank because they think it's the safest way to store their savings. Overwhelmingly, what I keep hearing is that people are desperate for a connection to money that actually makes sense, and decentralized digital currencies that are outside the reach of bankers and politicians makes a whole lot more sense than the Lebanese lira right now.
All right, so Mac, let's talk a little bit about some of those crypto mines you mentioned. If there's widespread power cuts and fuel shortages, how does this actually make sense as a way to make money?
So it makes sense because of hydropower. So in certain pockets of the country, like in the Shuf mountain range, which is south of Lebanon, there is abundant and inexpensive electricity being harnessed from the Lichtani River. Now, I spoke to Ahmed Abu Dair. He's 22 years old, and he runs an expansive mining network across the country. Now, he has 40 employees working for him. Some of his mining farms are actually running on solar power closer to the Syrian border. And what I find especially compelling about his business model is the fact that he allows people to remotely invest in his operation and then earn a monthly dividend in crypto. And some of his customers are at the opposite end of the country from where these farms are. Some are in Syria, Turkey, and Egypt. It's a really interesting setup.
A defunct hydro plant in Costa Rica is getting a new lease on life by powering crypto mining and bringing clean energy to a rapidly expanding business. More than 650 machines from 150 customers operate nonstop from this plant next to the Poas River, just outside of capital city San Jose. Costa Rica generates nearly all of its energy from green sources, where the state has a monopoly on energy distribution. The company invested $500,000 to venture into hosting digital mining computers.
El mercado es el minero internacional que va en busca de las mejores condiciones. Ese minero busca energía limpia, busca energía barata, que le sea económicamente viable y busca conexión a Internet. Donde la encuentre es donde ese minero va a ir.
Or it could be a new way to clean up the environment, or it could be both. Action News anchor Matt O'Donnell pays a visit to the Panther Creek plant in Carbon County, PA, which uses the waste from old coal mines to power a Bitcoin mine.
It is 2,800 miles away from Silicon Valley. And yet the borough of Nesquehoning, tucked into a valley in Pennsylvania coal country, is the site of America's newest large-scale Bitcoin mine. What do you think about the Bitcoin mine here?
Didn't know they had a Bitcoin mine.
My father was a miner years ago, but as far as what you call it, I never heard of it that way.
Publicly traded Stronghold Digital Mining purchased the Panther Creek Energy Facility, a defunct coal plant in town, to power its Bitcoin mine. Energy industry veteran Bill Spence says he came up with the idea to make money on digital currency while also cleaning up his home state of coal refuse.
I think I'm curious. Painfully curious.
You get the Bitcoin, you get rid of that.
Absolutely. There's a direct correlation with us with Bitcoin and cleaning up the environment.
Workers transport the coal waste from several sites, the largest being the Swoyersville dump site near Wilkes-Barre. They separate usable coal from the massive piles and use it to generate electricity. Some power is sold back to the grid for profit. Most is used to power and cool this field of computer servers, all hooked up to the blockchain to help process Bitcoin transactions all around the world. The blockchain, an automated computer ledger for Bitcoin, grants Stronghold fractions of Bitcoin as a thank you in return. That is the digital mining part. There are 80 trailers on site, each containing 64 computer servers, all of which have been mining Bitcoin for the 2 hours that we've been here. And in the span of that time, Stronghold estimates that they have mined about 1 Bitcoin, which, according to today's prices, means they earn more than $19,100.
It's a more sustainable way to do transactions.
We see the future of what Bitcoin, of what blockchain means to the entire world. Texas wants to be the centerpiece of that. And so we are promoting it, we are advancing it, but I would say we're providing the platform for those who are involved in blockchain, for those who are involved in Bitcoin, to make sure that they're going to have a location they can come to that does not have the sense of friction that comes along with high regulation. So that makes the ease of business far better, and it promotes that innovation. So we will continue advancing, and Bitcoin and blockchain is the cutting edge of innovation.
So for many years, ERCOT had been looking for loads of scale that could really respond in a demand responsive way that could help us balance our grid. Back in 2015, you may remember, we started the process of setting up loads in SCED. It was through, I think, about 2016 or 2017. No one showed up at first. There just wasn't any loads of scale that could really help us in that market. But it's here now, and it's a great thing for helping us to balance the grid, helping us to manage all of our resources. The Bitcoin has the nature of really turning down when prices begin to rise in a way that we can give that power back to other consumers. And at the same time, as we bring more and more renewables into the state, it becomes a driver of more renewables. Because right now, if we bring in all the renewables that are signed up to want to come to our state, there will be a significant depression of pricing during the day. By having Bitcoin there to assist and to stabilize those prices throughout the day, it's going to drive more renewables into our system.
Thanks so much for having me here to talk about the energy impact of blockchain technology and related cryptocurrency activities, and particularly Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin is important because it introduced the world to the concept of a fully decentralized, secure, trustless system of financial value exchange that turns on proof of work not as a necessary evil, but as a positive feature of its design. And I look forward to exploring these concepts with you today. My name is Brian Brooks, and I spent much of my career in traditional finance, culminating my service as acting U.S. Controller of the Currency. I also served as Chief Legal Officer of Coinbase and currently serve as CEO of Bitfury Group. Bitfury, directly and through our subsidiaries, is one of the most energy-efficient Bitcoin miners in the U.S. and globally. More about that in a few moments. I view the subcommittee's topic today through two lenses. First, in assessing environmental concerns about Bitcoin mining, or frankly any other energy use, not all energy consumption is created equal. Would we care, for example, that an activity consumes a lot of energy if 100% of that energy came from renewable sources? Presumably not. So if Bitcoin consumes an energy mix that is roughly twice as sustainable as the U.S. electric grid as a whole, that is a more relevant fact than the mere amount of energy that it uses. And even more important are the incentives that Bitcoin creates to generate more renewable production. The second lens is, we're a market economy in this country, so we should think deeply about the economic productivity created by Bitcoin, or anything else, per unit of energy consumed. Thus, for example, if Bitcoin competes as a store of value with gold, does the energy used in Bitcoin mining produce more economic value per unit of energy than gold mining? Or if Bitcoin competes with traditional finance as a means of payment or as a source of credit, does Bitcoin produce more economic value per unit of energy than financial services? The answers might surprise you, as I'll point out in a moment. Now, to be sure, Bitcoin's energy consumption is not trivial, but it is very small compared to many other energy uses that no one questions. Now, I'm not going to belabor the usual comparisons that you hear to clothes dryers or holiday lights or that sort of thing. That would trivialize an issue that the committee's talking about, which is an important issue. But what is clear is that the 188 terawatt hours used by Bitcoin last year, out of about 155,000 terawatt hours consumed globally for all uses, was sourced more sustainably than other uses on average. So for example, the energy mix used by Bitcoin mining was about 58% sustainably sourced last year, sustainable under the International Energy Agency definition, including wind, hydro, solar, nuclear, and with carbon offsets, compared to 31% for the US energy grid as a whole. And Bitfury's specific numbers are in line with those rough ratios. Now, even more relevant than Bitcoin's current energy use is the incentive effect it has on the future production of renewable energy. Bitcoin miners seek low energy costs, and the lowest cost always comes from excess capacity. which can include wind and solar energy and energy lost in the transmission and distribution process, among other things. As just one example, in 2020, in California, where I live, 1.5 million megawatt hours of solar production was curtailed, meaning wasted, because production exceeded demand. And the U.S. grid loses literally thousands of terawatts a year due to inefficient transmission. Now, because Bitcoin miners are easily able to locate near the source of production, these kinds of excess capacity sources can be turned into economic value through Bitcoin mining. And this has the effect of taking what can be an unprofitable business, for example, solar, and making it profitable. Put differently, if we want more wind and solar in this country with less need for government subsidy, Bitcoin can be part of the solution. Now, Bitcoin mining produces a series of other secondary effects, which I detail in my written testimony. These include grid stabilization, incentives to improve ASIC chip efficiency by multiple orders of magnitude, and new technology development for things like immersion cooling, something that my company has innovated. Now, an idea sometimes circulates that somehow we could have all of the positives without the energy usage if we would just abolish proof of work and migrate blockchains exclusively to proof of stake protocols. As I noted in my written testimony, proof of stake is terrific, but it is not a substitute for proof of work, which exists for an entirely different set of purposes, and without which innovations like decentralized finance would likely not exist. Let me just conclude by comparing Bitcoin to the economic value of other uses of energy, because that ultimately is the question for the committee. Bitcoin uses a certain amount of electricity to produce $1 trillion of value, and what you will find, as noted in some of my testimony, is that the aviation industry uses something like 50 times more energy per unit of value than does Bitcoin. The global financial services and insurance industry uses roughly the same amount of energy per unit. And you will note there's a little bit of glitchy data at the very end of my written testimony, which you've corrected now in the record, but I look forward to talking to you about the economic framework within which energy usage for Bitcoin mining and other usages.
Research at the University of Cambridge that showed that Bitcoin mining uses about 40% renewable energy. And in the non-Bitcoin mining economy, it's only 12%. So Bitcoin mining is already more environmentally adapted to non-carbon emitting energy. We're seeing some real innovation in that field. For example, in my state of Wyoming, where oil and gas is produced, when you drill an oil well, a gas well, for a while it's not hooked up to a pipeline. So the product, especially gas, is being vented into the air. Well, now these Bitcoin miners are pulling in a trailer, hooking up to that vented gas and using it to mine Bitcoin. So they're actually
mining to help mining.
Exactly. And doing it in a way that keeps carbon out of the air and uses it to produce another product, Bitcoin. So there's a lot of innovation that's happening behind the scenes.